When an SAC lands in an office as to be the head of an office, you better be ready and prepared for it. So we're trying to protect people from violence. We're trying to protect people from fraud. We're trying to protect people from cybercrime. There's just so many different things. We're always encouraging the public to try to give us information so we can act on it. See something, say something, and then do something, right? So then it's on us as a law enforcement community to do something about it.
Welcome to the headquarters for the San Antonio Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It is a huge division. It's a region that runs basically from north of Waco all the way to the border, all the way out to El Paso, roughly 1/3 of the state of Texas. In tonight's Spriester session, we sit down with Special Agent in Charge, Oliver Rich.
Special Agent in Charge, Oliver Rich, thank you for this interview. I want to start with your impressions of San Antonio, professionally and personally, and had you been to the city before you were posted here?
Yeah, so San Antonio, the first time I came here was years ago. I was actually in the Navy, and I was stationed down in Corpus Christi. And so we used to come up here just for fun. In fact, I remember coming up here to go to a basketball game, to a Spurs game. And I remember growing up watching basketball and watching George Gervin and those guys. And so when David Robinson got drafted and came here, we all, because we were in the Navy, we wanted to come up and come to Mr. Robinson's house and see him play. And so that was my first trip here. That was probably in the 1991 era.
Yeah.
Somewhere back there. So I enjoyed the city then. I thought it was fun. We did the whole Riverwalk thing back then. I remember we stayed out at Randolph Air Force Base, which was a really cool base, and had a good time. And so the city obviously has grown a lot since then. And coming back here last year was an honor to be in this position as a special agent in charge of the San Antonio division. But it's really grown a lot. There's a lot of things to do here. I think my impression of the city is it's just a fabulous city with great people, and I think that's the key thing here for me is just coming in and meeting all these people and just being a part of a community here with all the military folks, with myself being having a military background, my wife having a military background. I think it's a good fit for us.
It's amazing to me when you think about the San Antonio region that you're in charge of. I mean, it's way more than San Antonio.
It is, yes, sir.
How daunting a task is that?
Well, it's one of the most, I would say, unique offices in the FBI. I mean, it's not the largest, but it is unique in that we cover so much territory, and we have these two large resident agencies, one up in Austin and one down in McAllen. So you're right. I mean, it is a large territory. We cover from north of Waco all the way down to the border and to McAllen and Brownsville and out west to Del Rio. So it's a pretty large territory. We have great people assigned. We have an assistant special agent in charge in Austin and an assistant special agent in charge in McAllen, and they're really, really good at what they do. And so I don't have to be there all the time, but we talk continuously throughout the day and throughout the weeks about different issues that go on across this territory.
Is there anything unique about this territory when you talk about, you have a large portion of the border that you have to, that's part of your territory. You have, part of Austin, which is very, tech heavy. It's like, it's so big. You have so many different issues facing the people who live here.
That's right. It is very different. Each area, the border is very, very different from what we might, issues and threats that we might have to address up in Austin and Waco, for example, and what we deal with here in San Antonio is different as well. It can be different, but they're all interrelated if you could imagine that. So if you think about border issues and about just trafficking of drugs and weapons and crime along the border, some of that drug trafficking obviously impacts San Antonio, it impacts Austin, and it impacts Waco. So but that's not the only issue that we have to work, right? So we're working counterterrorism, we're working counterintelligence, and all of those threats throughout this division, we have people assigned to work those threats, but how we do it and the methods that we use can be different in each one of the areas that we have to work in.
Is there any of those things that stand out to you as the biggest concern right now?
No, I wouldn't say that, again, I wouldn't say there's anything that is the biggest concern. Our priorities, and our mission is to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. And I simplify that when I'm talking to our team and say, hey, we're here to protect people. We're going to uphold the Constitution. But I want to remind everyone every day that the importance of the job that we're doing here, and the bottom line is that we're trying to protect people from violence. We're trying to protect people from fraud. We're trying to protect people from cybercrime. There's just so many different things, civil rights, public corruption, all of these things we have to work on a daily basis. And so I think that the challenge for us is to continue to work with partners and to continue to work with not only in the law enforcement community, but also in the private sector and the academic community to help address those threats.
This is the first time that we're formally introducing you to the KSAT audience. What do you want people to know about you?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm just one of over 600 folks in this division that are trying to come to work every day and conduct our mission, like I said, to protect the American people. So, and we all take that job very seriously, and we're dedicated to that. And I remind our team on a daily basis, or I shouldn't say daily basis, but I remind our team as often as possible and frequently about, the risks that are associated with and the importance of that mission. And so I'm just one of those folks that are out there doing it. And our teams we have some incredible people here in San Antonio doing some incredible work that oftentimes is not in the news, but we know it, and we're pushing information to partners and sharing and being collaborative in that way. But it's important work. So I'm just one of those folks that is trying to do that mission and do that work for this region, for San Antonio, for Austin, and for the entire region. But beyond that, I mean, as a person, I mean, I'm just a regular guy. I mean, I cut my own grass, and I do those kinds of things, and I'm a guy that's sort of handy. I've grown over the years from my time in the Navy, fixing up houses. My wife and I have moved a lot. We've, from my wife's retired military, and we've moved a lot in our careers. We have 2 kids, and family is important to us. Faith is important to us. And we're part of the community that we're living in, and we're trying to protect as well. And so our employees and all the FBI employees are part of this community too. And so I think that's sort of what I would say is, just a regular dude trying to do a good job.
I think you're being humble, first of all, but or modest. I mean, you're a former Navy pilot.
Yeah.
You've been with the Bureau for how many years?
19 years.
There certainly, to me, seems to be a sense of duty in there. Is that what kind of goes across your career as you look so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reason people come to work here is not because they're come to work and get rich. I mean, we all come to work here because we have a sense of duty, and we're dedicated to being part of something that's bigger than us. And the things that we do here, the documents that we write, the cases that we work on, the intelligence that we share is making a difference for the American people every day. It is, and it's important work, and I never lose sight of that, and our team members don't lose sight of that either. So it is a sense of duty. I mean, my desire to go into the Navy, and then after my time in the Navy and now coming here to the FBI is just a continuation of that. It's just another way to serve and be a part of a team that's trying to do something bigger than oneself.
We talked about San Antonio and your history here, and as we're taping this broadcast, there's about to be a joint operation between the FBI and local law enforcement. How important are operations like that in this day and age?
Oh, they're essential. I mean, it's an essential part of what we do. It's not just the joint operations; it's the relationships that we have with here in San Antonio with San Antonio Police Department, all across this region with our local and state law enforcement partners. It is essential for us to be able to do our jobs in the most effective way. Oftentimes, we get information that is not necessarily a federal violation, but it's many times it's a state or a local violation, or it's a potential for someone to commit violence, and we want to make sure that we can have a name and a name and a face that we can call someone and say, you guys need to look at this right now because it's important to act on it. So it's a very, very important part of what we do in developing relationships with state and local law enforcement partners.
Is it also important for you to be out in the community?
Absolutely.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I see you're doing a briefing with members of the Jewish community coming up. Is that kind of, I mean, will we see you out in the community at some of these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So community outreach is a huge deal for us. And, when we talk about community outreach, we're trying to develop trust with the communities where we work. We're trying to let them know that there's many communities that don't want to report. When you think about civil rights or hate crimes, for example, there are many communities that don't want to talk to law enforcement about it. And so by us going out and engaging with them, we're giving them a conduit to say if there's something that comes up where they feel like they need to report it, then they have a face or someone that they can trust to call and say, I have an issue with this. Would you be able to help me? And so that's why we talk to organizations like the ADL or the NAACP or LULAC, and that's why those relationships are important. And it's one of the reasons why we started internally a council here to bring in people from a multicultural, multi-faith background to come in and talk about issues that they faced, because we want to get ahead of hate. We want to get ahead of crime. We want to talk about crime that affects all communities, fraud against elderly people, fraud against just your I guess I wouldn't say everyday average citizen, but people are impacted by this kinds of crime every day, and we want to be able to have a relationship with them and let them know that we can help.
Are you comfortable, for better or worse, being the face of the local FBI?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. Yeah, I am. I mean, look, I'm not as young as I used to be. I've got some years behind me and some experiences, and I say that when an SAC lands in an office as to be the head of an office, you better be ready and prepared for it. And I think that my track to get me here has put me in a position where I'm prepared. I was prepared to get here. People talk about last summer. I mean, we had a lot of, we responded to a lot of events last summer, and I was just getting here. But the expectation is to be ready on day one. And so I take the job very seriously, and I'm one of hundreds of people in this division that have that same mindset.
Yeah. Any major changes that you've made in the office since you've taken over?
No, I wouldn't say major changes. I mean, look, this is a great office, and it's had a great leadership team, for the past, multiple years. There hasn't been major changes. I've certainly made some changes. I mean, it's just things that I think are, it's time to make adjustments. I think every leader, when they come into the job, is going to try to make an assessment of how we can do things better. And so I've done a few things like that, but nothing major, I would say.
How important is trust from the community? We talked about that a little bit, not just from law enforcement, but from the community itself, and not just for you, but for your agents that are out in the field.
Yeah, so trust is important because it allows us, one, to be more engaged with the community. When we show up and we're there to do our jobs, or whether it's an interview or even to do an arrest, having trust with that community that we're there for the right reason and for the right purpose. I think that that when it comes to recruitment and trying to get people to come into the FBI, that's another aspect of trust that we don't often think about. Do people trust this organization enough to say, yes, I want to go and be a part of that? Do we have the right kind of reputation that fathers and mothers will encourage their kids to come and work with us? And so that's a big part of trust too. Diversity. Can we reach communities where we can say to a community that, yes, this is a place for you to come work? We've had a history, and some of it has not always been good, but we've made changes, and we're correcting that, and we want everyone to come and take a look at the FBI and see if they can be a part of this organization.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't thought of, this fact that you also need people to work for the FBI.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to encourage people to go to our FBI jobs and check us out, because we definitely talent is a big deal for us, and we're competing against a lot of impressive private and public competitive organizations out there. And so, but I think our mission at the bottom, at the end of the day, is really what attracts people to come here. And so, we're not looking for everyone; we're looking for the right people.
What's the biggest surprise for you so far?
We talked about it a little bit, but I think the biggest surprise for me is just how welcoming this community was. I mean, how open and welcoming, even in my own personal neighborhood. I mean, people walking by and giving me a hard time about, and a lot of them were Army, giving me a hard time about being in the Navy and that kind of stuff. And, even kidding me about the kind of car I drive. But I mean, it was kind of cool to come here. And it did remind me of my days in the military where we can just, rib each other and make fun of each other. But beyond that, I mean, the law enforcement partners and even some of the civic organizations have been extremely welcoming to me and my family. And so I can't thank them enough for that.
I'm surprised it was Army and Navy. I thought maybe it'd be Air Force pilots versus Navy pilots. I thought maybe that would be the ribbing that would take place.
Sometimes, my dad was in the Air Force. I did tell the story about like when, as a kid growing up, I was never really, I never thought about the FBI. I did watch all this, the shows and stuff. But my dad was an Air Force mechanic, and he used to talk about the pilots, but I remember he used to say like the Navy pilots are the best pilots. And so when I told him I was going to join the Navy, he was pretty excited about that. But yeah, it's a good deal.
That's all the questions I have. Is there anything else you want to bring up? Anything else you think we need to talk about?
Yeah, I would like to add one thing, because I think it's something pretty unique that we're doing here in San Antonio. I mean, people are often, wondering what we can do about violence and, the threat of mass casualty events. We've had a few of those here recently, and this division has had an experience with that, as you know, in history, for a number of those. And so, what can we do? Is there anything we can do? And we're always encouraging the public to try to give us information so we can act on it. So one of the things that we're doing here that's unique to San Antonio, and we're partnering with San Antonio Police Department and San Antonio Fire Department, is they have a fusion center where we share information. All of the law enforcement partners share information with the fusion center. And one thing that we've done is we've built what we call a threat mitigation team. I don't know if you've heard of this, but what it is it's a community-based approach to addressing the potential for violence of someone. So if someone in the public calls and says this person might be a threat, then that information gets shared with the Fusion Center. The threat mitigation team will look at it and try to find the most effective way to get that person off a pathway to violence. And sometimes that might be intervening with the clergy. Sometimes it might mean intervening with some type of medical or mental health care provider. And sometimes it might mean that we go out and arrest them. But so it's a really unique approach. It was something that was an idea that was brought to us by our behavioral analysis unit in Quantico, and we're doing it here in San Antonio, and it's already paid dividends. And so again, I would just put that out there, but I would also continue to encourage the public to, if they see anything or see someone that's suspicious, or if they feel might be moved towards taking some type of violent act, please report it and give us a chance to get in front of it.
Absolutely. What is the best way for them to do that? Like to reach out through the website, reach out through a phone number? What's the best way for somebody?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to do it. They can certainly call our 1-800 number and we can get that to you. They can do it via website, but they can also just call directly into their local police department and just say, report it to the local police. And we'll follow up on it. And when I say we, I mean collectively, we as a law enforcement community will follow up on it and try to do the best we can to try to mitigate that potential for violence.
And I realize you can't get too specific, but you have already seen this work.
Yes, absolutely. We've seen it work. We've seen it work where we've had a case where an individual was threatening violence or wanting to, saying things like, well, I'm going to replicate some of the shootings that we've seen in the past, and we can get in front of them. In some cases we ended up putting them into a mental facility, and then some cases we ended up arresting them. So we've seen it work. Our behavioral analysis unit, they have some stats where for anyone that they put into this program, over 300 folks or so, 99% of the time they're able to get them off a pathway to violence. So it's an effective way. We've seen it work, and we're doing it here in San Antonio. We think it's going to pay dividends.
Yeah. See something, say something. It just kind of follows along that path.
See something, say something, and then do something, right? So then it's on us as a law enforcement community to do something about it when we hear about it.
Special Agent in Charge Fields. I appreciate your time.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.